Hi, I'm Chike Coleman, and that's Sanford Hess, and this is Real Reviews Home Edition, the show where we talk about movies from our homes. And no more appropriate is this title than with today's two films, Wonder Woman and Wonder Woman 1984, or Wonder Woman 84 as it's called. Um, so I'm not going to be talking about the premise of Wonder Woman because the backstory for her is way too thick for me to mentally analyze in a summary. So I'm going to give that duty to Sanford, and he's going to talk about Wonder Woman, directed by Patty Jenkins. Sanford?
Well, I will do my best. I'm actually going to go back, spool it back a little bit because before I sat and watched Wonder Woman, I actually went back and watched the ending of Batman versus Superman, which is where the DC cinematic universe chose to introduce Wonder Woman. So at the very end of Batman versus Superman, Batman and Superman are battling each other and are interrupted in that by some kind of horrible creature, which I believe is from Krypton. I kind of fast forwarded through that part.
Mm-hmm.
But it comes to a point where Superman has been weakened from the fighting with Batman and the kryptonite. Batman's just a human because he can't really stand up to this kind of thing. And it looks really bleak for Batman. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, somebody comes along and blocks and starts kicking butt against this monster and turns the tide. Well, we are introduced at that point to Wonder Woman. Now, we have no idea who Wonder Woman is. Neither does Batman, and neither does Superman, which is actually kind of a fun little note there. But at least we are introduced to the character of Wonder Woman. So, flash forward to the beginning of the movie Wonder Woman, and we see Wonder Woman in sort of present day, in her alter ego as Diana Prince, and she receives some kind of a suitcase, and in opening the suitcase, it comes from Bruce Wayne and Bruce Wayne Enterprises, and there's a very aged picture of some people, including it looks like Wonder Woman. So that is a wonderful kicking off point for the movie because it actually takes us back in time in her memories. Wonder Woman is the first movie in a series, and so it has to tell the origin story. And unfortunately, the origin story for Diana is really cool. She is the only child among the Amazons, and there are different stories of how she got to be there, but what's most important is she's a very special child and is trained from a young age by the Amazons to be a great warrior. Well, just when she reaches the point where she's sort of realizing the fulfillment of her powers, just literally at that moment where something new and revolutionary occurs to her in terms of what she can do, she sees a plane sputtering into the water in front of her. And she jumps in and winds up saving the pilot, who is Steve Trevor. Turns out Steve Trevor is a spy who has stolen a German plane and has information and is being chased by Germans who proceed to invade the island, leading to a pretty cool battle scene between the Amazons and the Germans. Well, the Germans being dispatched by a bunch of badass Amazons, we then learn that Diana wants to help Steve in his goal of bringing peace to the world because World War I is occurring. So she winds up going back to England with Steve and becomes embroiled in some stuff going on in England. He turns out to be a spy. He's an American spy, but he works for the British intelligence, not really explained. Ultimately, she wants to go to the front because she believes she must battle Ares, the Greek god of war. And that is why she's there, because that is what the Amazons are on Earth to do, is to protect against the return of Ares. Well, a bunch of cool battle scenes culminate in a tremendous fight between Wonder Woman and Ares, and I will give that part away, leading to really some pretty cool final series of events, including Steve sacrificing himself to destroy these munitions so that the death and destruction that they would have spread is not going to be down on Earth. And Wonder Woman ends on this sort of very interesting note where now we're pulled back into the present day. We're back with Diana Prince, and she's looking at the sort of aged photos and remembering these scenes. And the movie really does a great job in terms of going backwards in time, telling a really very cool story, and coming back to the present day. And that is where Wonder Woman drops us off.
Okay, so having said all that,
It's a
here's what
lot.
I think of Wonder Woman.
Yes.
Wonder Woman's a great origin movie.
Yes.
Everything about that movie is just fantastic, from the costume design to the look of the period to the relationship between Steve Trevor and Diana, played by Chris Pine and Gal Gadot.
Godot.
Um,
Yeah.
I love everything about this film. The timing, the placing, who she learns to be in terms of how she wants to be a hero, how that intersects with her value set that she slowly builds throughout the movie. It's not quite there initially, and she grows into it, and I think that's very important for an origin movie. Um,
But
and I love that. I love that about her. I love that about Steve Trevor. He's clever, but not overly ambitious. Still a little bit boyish, kind of like Captain America a little bit. He was also up for that role, by the way. I should point that
mm,
out.
yeah.
Um, and just a really engaging character who got a really great origin movie. I really like this film a lot. But Sanford, what did you think?
Well, so this was my first time rewatching it since I watched it the first time. And like you, I that's exactly what I clued into. It's an origin movie and it always there's a lot of story they have to tell, but this one does such a great job of telling it. I mean, it makes it a complete and interesting story that gives us a sense of who Diana is as a character. This movie packs a lot more emotional punch than most superhero movies. Diana is allowed to have emotional feelings that we don't usually get from like a Batman or Superman movie, especially a Superman movie.
Mm-hmm.
Even Marvel movies tend not to have very much emotional tie to the characters, but Diana really grows as a person. Like you said, she discovers her powers, and you believe this relationship with Steve Trevor. I mean, even though she has incredible powers and is definitely not a pure human origin, you really buy their relationship. And I think that this movie deserves a lot of kudos for all those aspects of it, and it ties it up as a really good story, and we understand who she is and where she's coming from.
Mm-hmm.
I sense that you're drawing a line here about Wonder Woman in comparison to maybe other things.
I am going to say that I definitely recommend Wonder Woman because, man, Gal Gadot nails it, knocks it out of the park.
Yeah. I just finished an article. I was reading a little backstory about some of the films. She injured herself
Yeah.
making the first movie, and I mean, I also, you said she nails it, she knocks it out of the park. She does, and she does so much of the stunt work herself. She really, physically embraces and embodies this character. I can't imagine really very many other people doing as excellent a job of pulling it off as her. Now, what did you think of the way that they managed the accents, though? I was a little bummed out about that part.
I wasn't really as bummed as you were because I was just sucked into the period.
Yeah.
Like, that for me is the thing that always draws me in. You give me period, you give me likable, relatable characters, then I'm going to be invested.
Well, and so on I mean, what I was referring to with the accents more was the Amazons. I mean, it seemed like each of the different women had a different accent, including I'm not sure where Robin Wright's
It's
accent was from.
weird though. It's interesting you pointed out. Like, it goes from a little bit Spanish to a little bit Italian and then back again.
Well, hey, listen, they speak all those languages, so maybe that has something to do with it.
Yeah, I mean, that's their own form of uh, adaptation to the world, I suppose.
Yeah.
Having said that, do you recommend Wonder Woman?
Oh yeah, very much. I mean, on so many levels. It's good as just, mindless entertainment. It actually has some really interesting and positive messages. It's the rare it's the rare movie that has strong female characters in a superhero one. And finally, I think that it's a good match for her skill set, in terms of Wonder Woman and where she is with her skills,
Mm-hmm.
against World War One weaponry, where, we're talking about, just single bullets and things like that, that she has to learn how to deal with, but they aren't beyond her ability to deal with, which is my way of kind of teeing into the discussion of Wonder Woman 1984. So, yes, strong recommendation, no doubt. And I actually also recommend Batman versus Superman. Better movie than you might expect, and does have
If
this
you
cool
watch
ending.
the ultimate cut, if you watch the ultimate cut,
Yeah, I did not watch the ultimate cut. I really, truly just fast forwarded to the ending and watched the Wonder Woman entrance.
okay, fine. Wonder Woman 1984, again directed by Patty Jenkins, written by Patty Jenkins and Geoff Johns, starring Gal Gadot, Pedro Pascal, Chris Pine again, um, and Kristen Wiig. Um, this film takes place in 1984. We meet and spend time with Diana, now really high up at the Smithsonian. That's never explained. Like, she's very important to the Smithsonian somehow. Um, and she meets a gemology professor played by Kristen Wiig, who's geeky, nerdy, not really that confident in herself, and the two kind of strike up a friendship. While this is going on, there's this oil king or fake oil king, Maxwell Lord, who wants to get a hold of the stone that is made from Mayan, nay, Amazonian technology that has the ability to grant wishes. Uh, he uses his wish to actually become the gem itself, and whenever he talks to people and they make a wish, he makes it come true, but also loses something of himself, and that person who made the wish loses something of themselves as well. This whole pattern continues throughout the movie until we reach its conclusion where everybody's making wishes and the world itself is splintering apart. Diana makes a wish, of course, indirectly on the wishing stone that her love, Steve Trevor, returns. And they do that, and everybody was wondering when they saw Chris Pine in the photos, how in the world does this happen if, Steve Trevor died in the previous film? That's explained through the wishing stone and how his body comes back. Um, I will say this. The rest of the film kind of relies on a trope of sorts, in the sense that Maxwell Lord does not spend time with the one person he should be, who isn't really interested at all in his success, just interested in caring about him. And Maxwell Lord neglects that entirely throughout the majority of the runtime. I now need to put on my critic's hat again. Audience who watch this show, I know you love us for what we talk about. This movie is awful on multiple levels. It starts out perfect, absolutely perfect. You give us more time with young Diana, which I love. You give us a nice, interesting lesson for young Diana, but the movie never comes back to it. You give us a really fun mall fight scene with robbers trying to steal jewelry. It's amazing. It's great. You love the humor of it and the wink and the nod from it because of where things are within that particular set piece. After that, this movie sucks. Maxwell Lord is focused on being a money hungry, grubby, rich salesperson. And we don't know why that is throughout pretty much the entire movie until we see the last 5 minutes. So he's focused on making money and becoming rich and being successful because he has never been thought of as a success. We don't see why until the very end of the movie, which I think is a mistake by the director and the writer, withholding that information for that long. Because it doesn't allow us to really care about the character. If you showed us that flashback after you showed us Diana's, maybe that would make sense. Maybe that would make us care more. Um, this movie is just flat out bad because you give us Steve Trevor back and his amazing chemistry with Diana, but we all know that that chemistry is not real because of how they bring Steve Trevor back.
What'd you think about that as a plot device?
God, that was awful.
Really?
Mostly because you know that when they are having their huge romantic moments, she knows that she's not making any romantic physical affection with Steve Trevor. It's just with a guy that happens to look like Steve Trevor in the face. And she acknowledges that and does not care.
Right. Well, but I mean, what I liked was the way that the movie handled the idea that she looks at him and sees Chris Pine, whereas, like you said, he looks like somebody else, but because he's sort of inhabited or haunted by Chris Pine or whatever the verb is, she looks at his character and that's all she sees. I enjoyed that way of sort of bringing Chris Pine back. I really did.
I didn't, purely by the fact that she knows it. Purely by the fact that the whole movie she knows this is just a normal guy that looks kind of handsome, that's not Chris Pine.
Right.
But it but I don't care because the mannerisms of who Steve was are within this person, within this vessel.
Right.
Let's talk about, if I have to, Kristen Wiig in this movie. She plays the same dork she was in the Ghostbusters 2016 movie.
Right.
There's nothing different or unique about her portrayal between the two characters she played previously. Like characters that she's played on SNL versus characters that she played in the Ghostbusters reboot that they tried to do a few years back. It's the same one note character with nothing unique or interesting that's going to make us emotionally invest in her success.
Well, what did you think of Kristen Wiig playing the more
Villainous?
the version of her where where she was starting to gain more confidence?
Didn't give a crap.
Didn't give
Because like,
okay.
because like the envy was noted from the beginning and it was telegraphed. And you had a Me Too moment where there's a drunk guy hassling her two different times in the same movie.
Yeah. Same
You
drunk
had to
guy.
know that
Yeah.
that was going to go badly the second time around. The movie was way too easy to read. And that's its problem. They had a few genuine moments in there. We talked about how genuine the first movie was. Let me speak about the genuine moments that exist within Wonder Woman 1984. The genuine moments that exist are the fact that Maxwell Lord, we get to see his past at the very end via the lasso of truth. That's a genuine moment that got me emotionally connected a little bit. And when she saves the kid from the truck and speaks the Middle Eastern language to the kids,
Hmm.
that's it for the entire movie. I like the fact that Diana Prince does not spend time as Wonder Woman a lot in this movie. It's more like a detective mystery, and I kind of like that aspect of the film. Made her a bit more like Indiana Jones, and they gave her an Indiana Jones kind of car chase, which I thought was unique and interesting.
Right. Right. That set piece was one of the high points of the movie, I thought, in terms of action. That was really good. And you're right, very much similar to Raiders of the Lost Ark with that
But my
chase.
problem with everything boils down to you've not given me an emotional component to grab onto. Gal Gadot is great as Wonder Woman in this movie. Her confidence is better than ever, even when she's failing. Her ability to just be unbreakable and even to save people that you know are not worth saving, like spoiler alert, folks, she saves Cheetah at the end regardless of the fact that she didn't need to.
Right.
She saves Maxwell Lord at the end, regardless of the fact that she didn't need to. All these things just strengthen the character as a whole, but that's the only real strength of 1984. Having said that, and having given my opinion, Sanford, what is your opinion on Wonder Woman 1984?
Well, my wife and I watched it together last night, and we agreed at the end that it was definitely about a half an hour too long, and certainly there were huge parts that could have been cut out of it. You know, the flying through the fireworks, or the whole scene at the end where she was flying, which I really thought went on way too long. There was just another number of places where this movie just dragged. I did like parts of this movie, having lived through the 80s, and actually, ironically, I lived near Washington D.C. in the 1980s, so it was kind of fun to see, the metro stops and things like that I grew up with. I thought that this movie had some cool things to say about the technology. Here's Steve Trevor from essentially 1915 living 70 years later. But I also thought that they didn't have enough fun with that. There was one part where he was starting to say that he was living in this bedroom of this guy, and he's like, this is the coolest room I've ever been in my entire life. They could have had so much fun with that because there's like digital, clocks, or the kind of phone that's shaped like a football. I mean, there's so many things from the 80s that you can get good laughs out of with a modern day audience. Oh my God, I can go to this, go to this thing and dial up to, I guess they didn't really have dial up even in 1984. But you could plug into a Mac and you could draw a line across the screen. There's just things that they could have done that they could have made fun comparisons to modern age. Now, I do think there were some interesting comparisons to our current time that either were intentional or unintentional. In other words, my wife pointed out that she thought the Max Lord character was sort of Donald Trump esque,
Yeah.
and in the sense of being, and also invading Washington and taking over the White House. I
Hmm.
also felt like the final series of events with all these crazy things going on related to all the wishes reminded me in a way of the pandemic, and with things going on all over the world and everybody in uproar and chaos. But I feel like that one was kind of unintentional, and they there's so many ways this movie could have made statements or had fun with stuff or been more than it was. It just did not live up to what it could have been. So that was my biggest disappointment about this movie.
And I always say the fun of Wonder Woman 84 lived and died after the first 20 minutes.
See, the first 20 minutes, I'm not sure about that, because while it was an exciting scene, it reminded me of the pod race sequence in Star Wars One.
Okay, explain.
An unnecessary and extremely long competition scene that serves to do not too much else except show you something you already knew, which is this character is special.
I mean, I was more referring to the mall fight, but okay.
Oh, no, no, no. The mall fight was better. See, the mall fight to me was interesting because that sort of harkened back to the TV show from the 80s.
Yeah, for me, that's what it reminded me of. I'm like, yeah, this is the kind of fun I want the whole movie to have. I hope the whole movie is like this.
Yeah.
And then it was, oh, no.
Yeah, no, sorry. I was referring to the young Diana competition at the
Yeah,
beginning.
that was too Hunger Games for me.
Yeah.
I liked it a lot because it gave me more insight into her competitive spirit, but didn't take me anywhere new.
Well, and like you said, the lesson that she learned at the end, it didn't really harken back to anything, that relates to later in the movie.
Other than the fact that greed is bad and there are consequences for that greed.
But I see. I didn't see her as being greedy in that first scene. I mean, she was honestly, trying to fight back and win a race. But she wasn't being greedy. She didn't cheat because she wanted to cheat. She cheated because that was the only way she could compete, which to me is different. But I mean, the lesson learned was fine, but it just doesn't really apply to the Max Lord character or what he was doing, because there's a whole different level of evil there.
Right. So now, having said all that, do you recommend Wonder Woman 1984?
That's a tough one. I'm gonna fall back on the, if you already have access to HBO Max and want to take advantage of one of the few new blockbuster movies coming out, sure, watch it. If you're gonna ask me, gee, should I sign up for HBO Max just for this movie? I would say it's not really worth it. Maybe stay tuned for the extended Justice League that's gonna come out in March, which I'm stoked about.
Okay, so I'm gonna call that what I see it. That's a cop out non-recommendation,
Yes.
but I'll let you have it because it's
Yeah.
Christmas or after Hanukkah. Um,
How about you,
I
Chike? Do you recommend this?
I do not recommend this mostly because the heart isn't there enough for me. The fun of the first one is only in the first 20 to 25 minutes. The rest of it is about the morality of greed and what it can do to someone. And we've heard that lesson time and time again in movies. It's not anything that it's told in a new or interesting way. Um, the camera work was fine. The visual effects were fine, except for Cheetah at the end. Um,
Yeah, the fight scenes were nowhere near as good as the first one. And that goes back to the comment I was making about the weapons are too powerful now. I mean, that sort of roadway chase that we referenced with the Raiders, the Lost
yeah.
Ark time, you know, it's the weapons are too crazy, too powerful, and her powers are too strong. Also, I like the balance better in the first movie. Her powers are not as advanced, but at the same time, the weapons are not as powerful either, and so there's a better sort of match in the first movie. This one, her powers are too strong. It's too much. You know, she can
In
do
my mind, and
everything.
this is just me because I also have the same frame of reference you do, surprisingly, this third movie will serve itself best by making itself a lot more like the 1974 television series starring someone named Linda Carter, who who may or may not be in Wonder Woman 1984 in a blink if you miss it cameo.
Well, definitely the tip there is hang out through the credits.
Yeah, definitely, because I got more pleasure in the last 2 minutes out of seeing that random cameo that we're discussing than I did for most of the movie overall. Because of the line she has. The line sells everything about what I want Wonder Woman to be. And they don't use that enough in the movie. That's my
Right.
last little bit of a critique. So next time you see us, we'll be talking about something that was around in the new year because it'll be 2021 by the time we film next. What that will be, we won't know yet, but maybe, just maybe, it will be another DC property. We'll see. Until then, I'm Chike Coleman, and that's Sanford Hess, and we will see you all next time. Bye, guys.